The sun dipped low over the palm groves, casting golden streaks across the sky. 8-year-old Sami ran barefoot through the soft, dewy grass, his laughter echoing in the warm evening air. He had spent the day chasing butterflies, climbing trees, and collecting smooth stones by the riverbank. Now, as he turned to his favorite hiding spot, a small grove behind his family's farmhouse, he felt a familiar thrill of adventure. "Found you," Sami called Layla, his older sister, as she emerged from behind a date palm. Sami grinned mischievously, his missing front tooth making his smile even more playful. "You only found me because I let you," he teased, darting away before she could catch him. Life in their village was simple but full of magic. The fields stretched for miles, cradling their tiny home in a sea of green. The days were filled with the scent of fresh earth and the distant hum of farmers tending their crops. But as the sun set, a different kind of magic took over. The fireflies would come out, lighting up the night like tiny stars. Sami loved this time of day the most. He would sit by the old well with his grandfather, who would tell him stories of the past, of great warriors, lost cities, and rivers that whispered secrets to those who listened closely enough. "One day, you will have your own stories to tell, Sami," his grandfather always said, and Sami believed it. Because every day in the village felt like the beginning of a grand adventure, and he was the hero of his own tale. As he ran back toward home, the wind in his curls and his heart full of joy, he knew one thing for certain: he would never stop chasing the magic in the world around him.
The silence that had hung between them for weeks finally shattered, not with a whisper, but with a deafening crash. Omar stood in the doorway, his hands clenched at his sides, a cold fury brewing inside him that he hadn't known he was capable of. Layla sat at the kitchen table, her back to him, her face hidden behind a veil of hair. She had been silent for too long, too distant, but now, in this moment, he couldn't hold back any longer. Why? His voice broke the quiet, low and tremulous, yet it carried the weight of years of unspoken pain. Layla stiffened but didn't turn around. She had known this moment was coming. It had been written in every lingering glance, every hushed conversation, in the way her heart had slowly distanced itself from him. But hearing the question, hearing the rawness in his voice, brought everything crashing down on her. She couldn't ignore it any longer. The truth was here, staring them both in the face. I don't know what you're talking about, she muttered, her words barely a whisper. But even she knew it wasn't enough. Her own voice trembled with uncertainty, betraying the lie she was trying to weave. Omar took a step forward, his fists tightening until his nails dug into his palms. He could feel the rage building, an uncontrollable storm threatening to tear him apart. He had tried to convince himself that maybe, just maybe, it was his imagination. That the doubts he'd carried in the dark corners of his mind were nothing more than shadows. But now, there was no denying it. The truth had clawed its way to the surface. The texts, Layla, Omar's voice cracked, his words growing sharper with every syllable. The messages I found on your phone. How long? How long has this been going on? She flinched, the color draining from her face. The world seemed to stop for a moment as the truth settled between them, heavy and suffocating. She had never imagined that it would come to this, that the deception she had tried so hard to keep buried would be exposed in such a brutal way. The weight of Omar's gaze, the intensity of his pain, was almost too much to bear. Layla turned slowly, her eyes wide with the guilt she could no longer hide. I didn't want this. I didn't want to hurt you. Her voice was shaky, desperate, as if she were pleading for something, anything, that would allow her to escape the crushing reality of the moment. Omar's chest tightened with a fury so raw, so unrelenting, that it almost felt like he was suffocating. He had loved her. Loved her with a passion so deep that it had consumed him. And now, he stood here, shattered, watching the woman he had given everything to crumble before him. How could you? His words were guttural, each one coated in a mix of disbelief and a burning anger he could no longer suppress. How could you do this to me? To us? Layla's face crumpled as she tried to hold back the tears. She wanted to say something, anything, that could make this right, but she knew, deep down, that there was nothing. Nothing that could undo the damage, the destruction that had already been done. It was never supposed to be like this, she whispered, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you, Omar. But I felt so alone. And he made me feel seen again. The name hung in the air like poison, each syllable a jagged shard that dug deeper into Omar's heart. He? Omar spat, the word dripping with contempt. You've been with him, haven't you? All this time, behind my back? His voice rose, the fury building until it was an explosion of raw emotion. Did you think I wouldn't find out? That you could keep lying to me like this, pretending everything was fine? Layla closed her eyes, unable to meet his gaze any longer. She had betrayed him, betrayed the love they had built together, and now there was no way to escape the consequences. The guilt was overwhelming, drowning her in waves of regret, but it was too late. She had crossed a line she could never uncross. Omar's heart pounded in his chest, the ache of betrayal consuming him. Every laugh, every touch, every promise they had shared now felt like a lie. The love that had once seemed so eternal was nothing more than a fragile illusion, shattered in an instant. I gave you everything, Layla. Everything I had, he whispered, the hurt in his voice almost more than he could bear. The tears started to fall, unbidden, as Layla reached out, her hand trembling, but Omar took a step back, the distance between them now unbridgeable. He couldn't look at her, not anymore. Not after everything. I don't know who you are anymore, he said quietly, his voice full of devastation. The pain in his chest was a constant, a relentless ache that made it hard to breathe. I don't know what to do with any of this. They stood there, facing each other, their worlds crumbling around them. The air between them was thick with anger, hurt, and the shattering of everything they had once believed in. Omar's heart was breaking, but there was no way to undo the truth that had been revealed. This was the moment. The moment where everything had changed. Where the love they had built was torn apart by the weight of a betrayal neither of them could ever forget. The days that followed were a blur of silence. Omar moved through his life in a haze, each moment weighed down by the crushing burden of betrayal. The apartment they had once shared felt empty, hollow, the echoes of their laughter now a distant memory. Every corner of the place, every picture, every scent, reminded him of what he had lost. What she had taken from him. He couldn't escape it. The walls seemed to close in on him, and no matter how hard he tried to breathe, the air felt thick with the ghosts of his pain. Layla, too, was adrift in a sea of regret. She had left their home, but she hadn't left her guilt behind. Her nights were sleepless, her days consumed by the haunting realization of what she had done. She had betrayed the man who had loved her, and now there was no place left for her to hide from the consequences. She had no excuses, no words left that could erase the damage. Every apology felt hollow, every tear that felt like a reminder of her unforgivable sin. Omar's friends had tried to comfort him, but nothing they said could undo the damage. His closest friend, Tariq, watched him unravel, unsure of what to say. How could you console someone when the thing that had been most precious to them was ripped away in an instant? She doesn't deserve you, man, Tariq had said quietly one evening, the words falling heavy in the air. But they didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the suffocating feeling of betrayal that still gripped Omar's chest. Layla reached out to him once, maybe twice, but each time Omar shut her out. Her messages, filled with desperate pleas for forgiveness, sat unanswered. She had ruined everything. The trust was gone. The love was gone. What was left between them wasn't even a shadow of what they once shared. Omar was consumed by a cold, burning anger, one that seemed to burn hotter every time he thought of her, of how easily she had slipped away from him, leaving him broken. Then came the moment when he finally saw her again, standing on the street corner outside the cafe where they had met for the first time. She stood there, her face pale and tear-streaked, as if she had been waiting for him to make the first move. The past few weeks had made her feel like a shell of the woman she once was, and in that moment, she seemed to realize just how far gone everything was. Omar stood there for a long moment, staring at her, his heart a twisted knot of anger, confusion, and the remnants of love he hadn't yet been able to shake. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. The weight of everything that had happened, everything that had shattered them, hung in the air, suffocating both of them. I'm sorry, Omar, she said, her voice breaking as she stepped forward, hoping for something, anything to fix what had been broken. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that you don't get to apologize anymore. Omar cut her off, his voice colder than she had ever heard it. He took a step closer, the distance between them now a chasm that could never be crossed. You don't get to come back and make it all better with a few words. His words stung, but she didn't pull away. She deserved every bit of the pain he threw at her. I can't undo what I've done. I know that, Layla said quietly, her eyes filled with tears. But I love you, Omar. And I always will. Omar looked at her for a long time, the fury inside him still simmering, but something else was there too, something deeper, something raw. His pain, his anger, it was real, but the love they had shared, the history they had built, couldn't be erased so easily. Love isn't enough, Layla, he said finally, his voice softening. It's never been enough when trust is shattered. You can't love someone and hurt them this way, not and expect them to forgive you. A long silence passed between them, as the weight of their shared history hung over them like a storm cloud. The anger began to ebb, replaced by a quiet resignation. There was no justice in what had happened, not in the traditional sense. But there was something else, something that felt like emotional justice. Layla had made her choice, and now she had to live with the consequences. Omar turned away, walking down the street, the finality of his decision settling over him like a blanket. He didn't feel liberated. He didn't feel victorious. But he felt something else, something deep inside him that told him he had done the right thing. There was no more room for forgiveness, no more room for anger. There was only room for moving on, for finding the strength to rebuild what had been broken. Layla stood there, watching him disappear into the distance, and in that moment, she understood. She understood that love wasn't